Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Welcome to our second webinar for World Mental Health Month. On Tuesday, we heard from two amazing experts talking about mental health and what's happening outside the UN, and we had some fantastic messages about leadership, about communication, about the importance of listening to personnel, and really understood that change is possible. And we've heard from organisations that have really created change around workplace mental health and well-being. Today we're going to be hearing more about what we're currently doing within the UN and the UN system, and we're lucky to have four amazing presenters talking about the work that they're already doing, and I'll introduce them in a moment. Just a couple of housekeeping things. We're going to have a Slido question very soon, so we've got the details in the chat box or the Q&A box. So have a look at that, get your Slido ready, and I will have a question coming up for you in just a moment. We will have opportunities for questions and answers at the end of the session. So please jump on, start writing your questions now, and you'll have the opportunity to hear to ask your questions of our presenters today. So my name is Therese Fitzpatrick. I'll be moderating the session this morning. I'm the UN System Workplace Mental Health and Wellbeing Strategy Global Lead. So I'm sure everybody's heard of the Mental Health and Wellbeing Strategy. It was launched in at the end of 2018, and we commenced in 2019, really looking at what can we be doing within the UN system to improve mental health and wellbeing for all of our personnel. So just quickly running through the strategy. There's four key themes. The first one is about creating a workplace that enhances mental and physical health and well-being. So that is about making sure we have good communication, looking at our workplace culture, looking at the way we work together, and ensuring that we are reducing the risk of poor mental health with the way that we work. So a lot of work's been happening recently around that to make sure we know the risks in our organisation, and we know we can't reduce all of the risks, but what can we do to be making sure we're taking steps so that we're working well together. We're making sure we develop and deliver high quality psychosocial services across the UN system. So that's our internal counsellors. We have increasing numbers of counsellors, increasing providers of psychosocial services, and we're aiming towards everybody having equal access to quality services across the whole UN system. The third theme is around welcoming and supporting staff who live with mental health challenges. And next week, we're going to be hearing from a number of our personnel who have experienced poor mental health and hearing about their experiences. So we are making sure we reduce stigma and reduce discrimination for those who do experience poor mental health. And the fourth theme is ensuring we have sustainable funding for mental health and well-being. So there's been a lot of work happening at a system-wide level as well as within individual UN organisations as they look at how can we actually look at all of those themes and how can we create change for us all. So we have four amazing presenters from different UN organisations. We will be speaking today to Anna, who's the Staff Welfare Officer at IOM, Regan, who's the Chief of the Staff Counselling Unit at WFP, Nancy, who's the Unit Head of Learning and Development at IAEA, and Natalia, who's a HR Associate at UNFPA, who'll also be talking about UN City in Copenhagen. So before I start to introduce them, we do have our first Slido question. So really interested to hear it. Have you noticed your organisation taking steps towards mental health and wellbeing, particularly at this time of COVID? So I'll give you a minute to answer this. It's looking positive so far. Okay, I'm going to assume that won't go up two more. So fantastic to see that people really are noticing that difference and that you're seeing your organisation taking steps. And we'll have another Slido question in a little bit that will actually ask you what are you actually seeing, so we can learn a bit more about that. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Anna from IOM, who will talk about the work that they've been doing both during the COVID, but also they've had a long-standing mental health and wellbeing strategy.
Thank you, Therese. So I'm just going to talk very briefly about our strategy, which we developed in 2017 and launched in 2018. It's a 5-year strategy. And what we did to build it was we wanted very much to build it on what exists and educate and involve people as part of the process of the investigation. So we did some qualitative research, some quantitative surveys of people, what there was in place for mental health and well-being. We looked at what else was available in other jurisdictions. And so what we did, if we can go back to the previous slide, please. We looked at what there was for mental health and well-being in terms of leadership, in terms of the team and how teams coped and worked, the internal culture and politics, what was happening in terms of diversity and the interaction between diversity and mental health and well-being, the physical infrastructure, the support systems such as human resources, occupational health, what was going on in training and development. And so in all of those areas, we looked to see what was available and where the gaps were. And when we did all that research, we then created a list of what existed and what more needed to be added. Next slide, please. So we identified really 3 key areas that we needed more in terms of prevention and more in terms of care, access and provision. And whatever we designed as interventions in those areas needed to be accountable, needed to be measurable. And those are the core areas of the strategy. And we also applied it to all staff. So the strategy is for all staff, both national and international staff. And we subdivided the staff into 3 groups: people who are psychologically well and physically well and on duty, people who have mental health, well-being problems and or physical health problems also on duty. And then the smallest group were people who became actively mentally ill while on duty and needed emergency help as quickly as possible. And what we recognize also is that the 3 subgroups are not static populations. People move from one to the other. And so we needed to accommodate that in whatever interventions we chose. We assumed that there's a continuum from well-being to mental health to mental illness, and that we tried to factor in. We also had the levels of intervention were interventions for the staff, for managers, and for the organization itself. And we had 5 output areas. And I'm just going to focus on 2 of them, or 3 of them actually. And should you want a copy of our strategy and also our analysis of what's been working, then please contact me. I'll give you my email address at the end, and I'm happy to send both papers to you. So the first output was around sort of under prevention, was about education. And so we have a lot of educational material that we produced, from mental health awareness to helping people when they're mentally ill, to looking after well-being, personal and team well-being. And that material, some of that material is available on our web pages. And again, I'll give you the link at the end. And some of it is also available on the UN Mental Health Strategies web pages. We have some educational material and programs for managers, so that they can think about how to recognize and then help someone who may have a mental health problem, and some suggestions on where they can seek help for that person and for themselves, so that they're supporting people with mental health problems in a positive way. We've developed a serious video game for case coordination for people with complex mental health problems, because in any organization, there will be someone who has a complex mental health problem who needs coordinated support. So that video game is now complete, and we're just about to launch it. And again, we will be launching it to the whole UN system. We have a methodology for well-being, which I'll speak about in a minute. And then the last intervention is we're working on some organizational policies, such as substance misuse, care coordination, and entry on duty medical exam now contains questions about mental health and psychological self-care. Next slide, please. So this is our well-being methodology. So what we've done is we created this template by looking to see what key factors needed to be in place in a team or in an organization if well-being was a key something that really mattered and was in place. So those are the areas. And what we designed is that we give a mission this template and work with them so that they define their version of well-being, and they also work out how they want to assess themselves. So sometimes it's qualitative, sometimes it's quantitative, sometimes it's a mix. We then help them to do that self-assessment. Then we help them analyze their findings and develop a well-being plan, which we then support them to implement. So again, this is available to everybody for you to use, should you wish to use it. And so, thank you. Next slide, please. So just in closing, that first link is to all of our educational material that you're welcome to use. And lastly, that's my email address if you want to have copies of the strategy and our analysis of its impact. Thank you, Therese.
Thank you, Anna, and amazing to hear, I guess, that the comprehensive approach that IOM has taken and all of the different elements that you've considered as part of this. So I've got some questions I would like to ask, but I will wait until we get to the question and answer session. I'm going to throw now to Regan from WFP to talk about the work that you've been doing there.
Great. Thank you very much, Therese, and thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to everybody. So I think from a WFP perspective, we're pretty lucky. We're pretty far along in terms of our strategy and where we're going and the way we've been going. I'll tell you a little bit about what we have in place and how we want to evolve. So at present, we've got 23 staff counselors in the organization globally. We've got 10 doctors, medical professionals, and we've got also an insurance team, an ergonomist, all under one division. So one nice thing about the way we've been able to evolve is we have a division. So we're not necessarily tied to another division or unit. We're relatively independent. And so the way we've been trying to function is like a multidisciplinary clinic. So we believe that the best approach for staff well-being, be it medical, psychological, and of course they're both tied, is that you have a number of different quote unquote eyes on you. So if you were walking to a clinic or a hospital, you would have a number of different professionals who are working to support you. So that's very much the model we're taking. We've also just hired, we created a position, it's the first one in the UN that I believe, of a family liaison officer. So this is my third UN agency. I've dragged my family all over the planet. And I know what it's like when you land in a duty station and well, how your family lands is how you land. So from my experience, there's been a serious gap in that. So we've just started this. We were lucky enough to get funding for a couple of years. It's a fairly broad-ranging TOR, but one is to work on the policy area, but then also two, looking at practical support, looking at those underused policies that are designed to help families. Now, over the last year, what's obviously critical to us is demonstrating utility. But we've been able to do that because we've grown. In the 3 years that I've been here, we've grown from 12 to 23 staff counselors. And this is coming not at our request, but coming at the country level, the regional level, at various points in the agency, which has been really good. So over the last number of years, we've had over 6,000 contacts with staff, and we have a staff of about 18,000. So people are utilizing the services. We've done over 200 seminars, workshops, and I think what we would like to do, in my experience, I think, is the traditional understanding of a staff counselor in the UN system, and especially for those field-based agencies, is that, you know, if a bomb goes off, you call the staff counselor. When we look at our data and what people are approaching us with, certainly the individual consultations are important, and it's the backbone of what we do. And we do, obviously, when there's traumatic incidents, we're involved. But the vast majority of people are coming to us with issues that have to do with their relationship with the agency through HR policy or management or whatever. And so what we really want to do is to be able to find mechanisms to feed that back to the agency at large. So we've developed a fairly comprehensive reporting system where we're able to summarize the work of the staff counselors in aggregate, of course, and then we're able to feed that back to the agency. Because what we really want to do is work in a proactive manner. We know the data suggests 1 in 4 UN staff members are reporting symptoms of depression, anxiety, burnout. We know all of that. So what we need to do is to move into more proactive ways to work with staff. So again, with staff counselors, people come and see us when the wheels fall off, which is good. That's what we're here for. But we have a certain insight, I think, into the agency that we want to be able to feed back and work in a proactive manner. So what we've been doing in WFP is we've just developed a platform that is interactive, that is global, and that we designed using focus groups from staff or focus groups of staff and management about what they wanted. And so we developed a platform that's got over 40 different topics that are easy to read, concise, to the point, not full of jargon. So the other nice thing about this is it's a centralized source of information. So when we designed the platform, and it's available in a downloadable app, it's also on the web, is that we control the content management system. So for example, when COVID happened, which is when we launched it, we were able to have a centralized source of information regarding all aspects of COVID immediately, and we continue to adapt it based on needs. So we've got everything on COVID from reliable resources to what you do if you're quarantined, to managing worry, to tips for parents. And then we've expanded it based on feedback that we've got, which I think is important. Managing tips for remote managers or for managers who've never managed remotely before, these kinds of things. So we've also got 40 other topics on there, everything from mindfulness to type 2 diabetes, trying to take a broad approach, but giving staff tools by which to manage their own well-being. Plus, it's a great platform for raising these issues at a global level in our agency. So what we find is that we're able to have these conversations at a much higher level than we had before. We also have a platform on there for self-assessments, so you can take a burnout questionnaire, you can take mood, anxiety, depression, sleep, etc., etc. Then you have the option of sending either just not reporting at all or sending it to a staff counselor of your choice. We launched it in March. It's been pretty successful. It's not a mandatory thing for staff to do. We've had over 4,200 unique visitors to the site. We've had 40,000 page views. And importantly, what we're doing now, and I think this is really key for our strategy, is we need to partner. We need to partner with internal divisions. So we're partnering with HR to develop, basically what we're doing is we're working with them to provide a source for staff on duty station information. So what, again, this has to do with how people land and when they move, is the quality of information you get about a duty station is crucial to well-being. And I think the point I want to make is that well-being is a broad stroke. So we're working with HR to get out of our silos. I think one of the problems we all have in the UN system is we work in silos. Left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing. So we're actively reaching out to our partners within the agency to say we want to work with you. And the result and the response has been fantastic. So I look at this, the initiative we're doing with HR to basically have a digital welcoming package available globally that is designed by local and regional HR, that they can tell you what they want to tell you about their duty station. And you've got all this great well-being information on there as well. So that's one of the things that we're trying to do. I know one of these so partnering is key for us. One of the questions that came out of this is, what would you tell agencies to do? And I think what I would say is that if you don't have a staff counselor, or you've only got 1 or 2 staff counselors, to invest in it. Look, I think, we can look at the number of contacts that we've had in an agency over the last year, and 6,000 staff contacts is people are accessing the service. We launched earlier in the year a free EAP for staff, so they could, if they didn't, a free EAP where they could contact an EAP program. No one would know about it. The agency would pay for it. We had 20 people. We looked at the stats since January, use that program. And so I think people make a mistake sometimes when they believe that, well, we've got these external EAP programs, but nobody's using them. That's because I think the benefit of having in-house is that people get to know you, they develop a trust, they develop a relationship with you, and then they access you. And then, if it's strategic, that information can be used to better systems, better programs, better policy development. So I would really, really encourage those agencies that are low in terms of the ratio to consider the investment. I think you get a high reward, high return on investment, and I think we know what the data is. 1 in 4, duty of care, morale, or the morality, I think, of being able to support staff through these difficult situations. And it's risk mitigation, but it's psychological risk mitigation. And so we really are working towards, in WFP, taking a really proactive approach by putting tools in people's hands, but then giving them access to internal in-house systems that can support them. I'm happy to talk about this at some other point, so you can contact me at any time, and I'd be happy to walk you through any one of the programs that we're implementing, trying to implement, and the way in which we're developing those partnerships. Therese, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Regan, and so many important points there for all of us. I really liked the point of not working in silos and the importance to work across all of the organisation. So it's not the council's job, it's not HR's job, it's not the staff union's job, it's all of our job, and we can all take a role. And amazing to see all of the fantastic work that's happening at WFP, and also what a difference it's making to the staff there. Now, before I throw to our next speaker, I have another question for our listeners. So you've said that there is work happening around mental health and wellbeing within your organisation. So now we'd like to know what your organisation is actually doing to improve mental health and wellbeing. So really keen to hear of really broad answers and what you've noticed has been the change in what's happening. So we're seeing policy developed, awareness, staff support, which is fantastic. And I think policy is really important, and the policy issues we see with mental health and wellbeing are so broad, and particularly at this time during COVID, looking at when so many people are working away from the office, how do we look after mental health and wellbeing, and how do we have policies around that? And making sure, as we've heard from both Regan and Anna, about the importance of staff support and having counsellors there and making sure we've actually got support there where people need it. I think communication is such an important one. So we did a health and wellbeing survey earlier this year with 13 UN organisations, and the key thing that came up around what supported people's mental health and wellbeing, or what was lacking, was communication. So obviously having counsellors is important, but it's important for everybody in the organisation to understand how important communication is, transparent communication about mental health, but about everything. It makes people, particularly in these uncertain times, can make a really big difference. Great to hear people are happy about the World Mental Health Day sessions, and obviously it does seem like I'm seeing a lot around awareness and the webinars that run and different training that's happening across organisations. And importantly, I saw the Secretary General's communication. So it is really, this is where I think, as I said right at the start, leadership is so important. So we know that the Secretary General is very committed to mental health and wellbeing across the UN system. And it's so fantastic to see him really support this. And both him and the DSG, we often see when they're talking about issues that they come back to mental health and wellbeing. So it's great that we have support from the top, and that does make such a difference. I've seen a question around smaller offices, and it'd be great to come back to that in our Q&A, both from a smaller offices as well as a smaller UN organisation, because this does need to be something that is for everybody. And absolutely, we need more conversations about mental health and wellbeing, and there is obviously still a lot to do. So there is a lot of work happening, and this is by no means to say that we've got everything happening. So there's still a lot of work for us to do, and I think we would all acknowledge that. But having more conversations, hearing about people's experiences, and being more open to talk about mental health and wellbeing is so important. So amazing list that I have seen there. We might, lots of food for thought as well then to think about for our Q&A session. So I might now pause and jump to our third speaker for today. Welcome Nancy from IAEA. Looking forward to hearing what you have to say.
Thank you so much, Therese. And it's really exciting to be here. I think this is the most important month of the year for us, that we can celebrate and talk about mental health in our workplaces. And so I'm going to talk a little bit of maybe just explaining the IAEA. We're based mainly in Vienna. We also have offices in Monaco, a few people in Tokyo, New York, and in Toronto. And in Vienna, we share the premises with the other Vienna-based organizations. And so in that sense, in terms of the availability of resources, we share the BIC Recreational Center. We have the usual macro overall well-being things through the medical services. But I wanted to talk more specifically about things that the agency, the IAEA itself is doing, not necessarily around the wider Vienna-based organization. So I'll be representing what we're doing here. What we did at the beginning was to take stock and to go back to the UN mental health strategy, talks about a biopsychosocial model of health. And we decided to reflect that within the organization by having a holistic approach, just like that strategy. And so if you look at the slide that we have up there, you will see the card that shows how we promote well-being, mental well-being at the agency, and all the different actors that are involved and what is available in terms of resources. So this is not a traditional way to do a strategy development, but it certainly then shows you what resources we have. And it tells staff in a snapshot in terms of what's available and where you can go for certain help, but also helps us to see how different aspects are playing into promoting our mental well-being at the agency. So in terms of policies and the competency framework, psychosocial support on the other hand, and who has accountabilities for various things there, what you are personally accountable for and what you can expect, as well as the training that's available. And you can see the different actors that others have talked about in terms of the managers, staff council, UN security, the staff counselors, the medical services, and HR as well. One of the things that I did want to zero in that I think is quite special about us, and I think Regan, you spoke to that also, is really looking at resilience, because this is where we promote and strengthen our well-being. And the agency has been focusing on resilience, and particularly micro-resilience, because that impacts in the workplace in terms of immediately on performance and productivity. We're appreciative that we have a wide, diverse range of staff and all that that brings, including a wide range of learning styles, personalities, etc. And so the agency has taken a toolkit approach in developing some of our own materials, but also working with world-renowned leaders who have developed their own materials to provide a toolkit approach where staff and teams have a range of resilience tools and frameworks to choose from that can make us more effective in understanding ourselves and our context, and then successfully navigating through adversity. So we have a wide range of learning resources. Some are bite-sized, some of them will come in print form, We have podcasts that we have developed that help managers, and you can listen as on the hook if you like. We have relationships where you curated resources with others like LinkedIn Learning. We have videos, both in-house developed videos as well as those that we have partnered with. We have training, we have structured blended learning. And of course, we begin always and try to encourage a lot of self-assessment. I think, Regan, you spoke to that as well, because that helps individuals to see where their own personal gaps are. And then having understood ourselves and our teams and our and where we are, then also using the same information in terms of how can I use this framework or this tool in a way that's authentic to me, to our circumstances, and to our team, because that has an immediate impact on our performance and our productivity and the workplace relations. So we're seeing promoting of mental well-being in that holistic environment as we develop and promote and strengthen well-being and resilience in the wider workplace. We do have a special focus, like I said, on the micro resilience and this toolkit. So we've worked for the last couple of years working with different consultants to deliver on this one, and we keep on promoting it within the agency. There are two principles that I did want to talk about here. One of them I've already mentioned, which is really working with individuals, because that's where it really starts, that the frameworks are being used in ways that are authentic to individuals because we are diverse. And the second one is working with individuals so that we can understand how much we can bend without breaking. Change is going to happen. Uncertainty is going to happen. If COVID taught us nothing else, is that none of us is immune around the world to uncertainty and to change. But also recognizing and working with staff through these self-assessment and these toolkits to recognize how far I can bend and not break, how far I can authentically be able to lean in to changing circumstances, and then critically where I can reach out for help if I need to, and I realize that it is beyond what is my own capability, and this is then where we partner with counselors and with medical services. So mental health is seen as a holistic framework in that regard within the agency. So this is just what I wanted to present to you in terms of where we are and what I perceive to be our niche in terms of how we handle and promote well-being within the agency at the IAEA. Thank you. Back to Therese.
Thank you, Nancy. And it's amazing to see the comprehensive approach that you've taken there. And I really like the way you've really broken it down into all of the different elements and looking at mental health and wellbeing so broadly. So I think there's a lot of great tips that we can all take on board and think about how do we structure this? How do we focus on different areas? So great to hear about all of the amazing work. And also at this stage, want to acknowledge you for the video that we showed at the start, which really makes me smile every time I see it. And great to see that sharing and the creativity and the work that's happening and how we're all working together across the UN system. So I will now throw to our last speaker, Natalia, who is from UNFPA, but also talking about this from a UN city in Copenhagen perspective. So over to you, Natalia.
Very much. Thank you very much, colleagues. I'm very happy to be here today, and I'm so much inspired by your previous presentations. I can see what I can bring back to the UN city from now on to improve our health and well-being strategy. My presentation today will be a little bit with a more practical approach and with a focus on how our strategy was developed and some practical ideas of what we have implemented in the UN city for your inspiration as well. As Teresa mentioned, I'm an HR associate in UNFPA procurement service branch, but I'm also part of a small team working on the health and well-being strategy in the UN city in Copenhagen. On this slide, you can see that we are 12 agencies, or UN city houses 12 agencies in 2 campuses, and there are around 2,000 employees, both staff and non-staff. Slide. Thank you. Our work on the health and well-being strategy started in 2018 from the conversation of two HR associates from UNHCR and UNFPA in the lobby of our beautiful UN City building. We were discussing that each of our agencies, we do have our strategies, there is support, there are different ideas. There's also quite a lot of activities in the UN City, but why would we not have something that unites all of the agencies and brings different things together so that the other agencies can also get something out of it? Somebody has posted the question, what about the small agencies? We, for example, have the agencies that do have 1-2 people. They probably do not have resources, but then maybe we can use our synergies and invite those people from those agencies also to us. So the idea of supporting employees in terms of health and well-being within the UN City was warmly welcomed by the UN City manager and afterwards endorsed by all the heads of the Copenhagen-based agencies. Next slide, please. And we have started the work. So our strategy, we have based our strategy on the holistic approach to health and well-being, and we divided it into 6 components: environmental, physical, nutritional, psychological, spiritual, and social. Because we believe that these components are very closely interrelated and have a very strong influence on each other. We have also in this strategy emphasized that the responsibility on implementing the strategy lies on 4 different levels: organization, leadership, peers, and individual. Based on this approach, we have come up with the different ideas of, in these 6 components, 6 elements, and also on 4 levels. And then we put them all together into a beautiful brochure that I actually have in PDF format and can also share, and I'm very willing to share with you, where we came up with the small hanging or the low hanging fruits that can be implemented here and now. Next slide, please. So you can see on this picture, so on the second picture, this is my UNFPA colleague Rachel, who's holding our brochure, and you can see on the picture, it's herself. So what we feel, or what we did, we have put all the pictures in this brochure there of our staff, of our staff. And what we feel that it's very appealing to the staff to look through this brochure and to adapt these ideas, because they can recognize themselves, they can recognize their colleagues. On the first and last picture and fourth picture, you can see that we were also crowdsourcing the ideas. We wanted to understand what are the needs of the UN staff in the UN City are, as my previous colleagues were saying. So we wanted to understand what the needs are. So therefore, on the first picture, you can see that we're doing exactly the same poll as we were doing today in this presentation to get the ideas on all these 6 different elements and what can be done better in the UN City. Then we made an analysis to see what we can implement and when and how. And on the fourth picture, you can see another my UNFPA colleague, Karine, who's standing with the question, what climate action can I take? And then there is a stand aside her with a marker, with a pencil, where anybody can come and write their idea on the board so that we can then also see what can be implemented there. And on the third picture, you can see that when we had a launch of the strategy in 2019, we invited the managers of the different UN agencies to share their own personal stories so that in what they do in order to maintain and improve their health and well-being. And in that sense, we wanted the managers also to walk the talk, but also to inspire their colleagues or to inspire their staff, and also to show that they do support their staff in these very, very important matters. Next slide. What are the concrete mental health activities that have been undertaken in the UN City within the UN strategy so far? So here is a handful of those. So you can see that we have a gym with the classes, including yoga. We have meditation room. We have little garden for the staff where they do grow some vegetables. We have a choir. We have established a UN City clinic with 2 doctors, one physiotherapist and one acupuncturist. And we have hired a well-being counselor that provides the individual and team sessions. When we were lucky, before coronavirus, we had the face-to-face workshops and seminars on different areas, and these are listed also here. For example, we had the Sleep Awareness Week that was organized by WHO and the Wellbeing Council. UNDP has invited Peace and Purpose, where all staff were invited also too, or the staff from different agencies. Then in UNFPA, we organized, it was mostly for UNFPA staff, but the other agencies were also invited. That was a stress workshop. And right here now, WHO is organizing the mindfulness-based mental agility training that will start in November. So this is what we have done so far. It's just a handful of things. There are many more. And the next slide, please. Even though we feel that we have done a lot and we have a lot to offer, we are always looking for the new ideas. So therefore, I'm so happy to be here today because I'm being inspired and I will bring something back to my team. But there are other things that we were considering, and some of them are here. So we were considering to have to organize a well-being fair where we would invite the specialists within their health and well-being with a stand in the lobby where people can come and get some advice, and also have some simultaneous sessions, interactive sessions with the staff on different matters within health and well-being. We are considering to rearrange the space in the canteen to reduce noise. We're thinking about introducing lunch buddies where you pair people together. This is to address the growing issue of loneliness of people, but also to increase the network of people. There is also some other things like regular presentations on self-care by staff council and other specialists. We're also thinking about having the common morning song in the lobby. And right here now, after COVID, we are considering flexible work settings. And during COVID, we also, some of our services that went online, like the yoga and gym classes that went online. The counselor was, the wellbeing counselor was also available for online sessions and was doing some presentations. And right here now, we are developing the inclusion strategy for the UN city in Copenhagen to ensure that everyone, independent of ethnicity, religion, gender, sexual orientation, are not discriminated or excluded. And the last slide, please. And what I would like just to remind you is that one thing what your organization can or cannot offer. Now, we were just talking about the small offices, but I think it is also important to remember that you are responsible for your health and well-being. And sometimes even very, very small things can help. What I have done for myself, I listed the small amount of things, like 4 things, what I can do here now in order to overcome the anxiety in result of COVID situation, the stress. And this is something what I think anybody can do. We're different and different things are important for us. So, and therefore I'm listing them here, my staff. Thank you so much. And if you have any questions, I will be happy to answer them. Over to you, Therese.
Thank you so much, Natalia. I really love the idea of the UN city in Copenhagen, just because it gives us that idea that we can all work together, and actually your location is really important for the work that we're doing. So this doesn't, obviously each UN organisation can have a strategy, but if we can be working together as a duty station, I think that's where we see some really good results coming out. So fantastic to see. I'm so happy to have that perspective here today. So thank you. So now we have about 15 minutes for questions and answers. Now, I had written my own questions that I wanted to ask, but I can see I probably should answer the questions that the audience has asked already. And early on, there was a really good question around small UN offices being left out. And how do we reach out to small UN offices? And I think it's a really important point. The UN is a huge place. There are so many different organisations, there's so many different offices. The first point I'm going to even though I'm the moderator, I'm going to jump in with a little answer to this one, mostly focusing on smaller UN organisations, because I'm really aware that it's a significant issue. So I work with an UN, the Mental Health Strategy Implementation Board, and we've got membership from a lot of the larger UN organisations, but we're really keen to have smaller UN organisations also involved with that. So if you are from a smaller UN organisation and you're not currently involved on the implementation board, please do reach out. Every UN organisation is invited to have a place on that table. The other thing we did earlier this year when I was talking about the health and wellbeing survey, it was actually a lot of our smaller organisations that took part in that. And I found that was really important for us to realise that while some of the larger organisations are able to do their own health and wellbeing surveys and they're already working in this area, one of the key things about us, why we're doing this at a system-wide level, is to ensure we're not duplicating resources, to ensure we're working together. So I do think it is really important. I do think we've got more work to do within that. So again, I've been talking to some of the smaller organisations. I'm keen to look at the opportunity to almost have a group of smaller organisations working together, because there are different issues that come up, and then also working to ensure we're sharing resources across the whole system, because there's amazing resources out there. And we've heard 4 of those stories today, and we need to share those resources. We need to make sure we're getting to all of the UN organisations, and to make sure we're getting our messages out across the whole UN system. And that is obviously one of the big challenges we have, but I think we can all play a role in making sure everybody's getting these messages. The other part of this question, I think, is also within UN organisations, is how do we make sure this isn't a HQ initiative, and that everybody all the way through the organisation hears about the strategies that are happening at a system-wide as well as an organisational level, and to make sure action is happening across the whole system. So I'm interested to hear from you, Regan, in the first instance, around what have you done to ensure that the whole of WFP is playing a role with your mental health and wellbeing strategy?
Thanks, Therese. Look, it's outreach. I think I mentioned in the chat to you that HQ initiatives are great, but they typically die 40 feet from the front door if the field doesn't buy into them. And so I've seen that time and time again, and having spent most of my career in the field. And so I think that's, again, where we're lucky in that we've got a large number of staff counselors in the field. We've worked very hard with managers at all levels of the organization to demonstrate the utility of wellness initiatives across the board, be they vaccination campaigns, be they seminars, be they whatever, having a staff counselor. And I think what happens is then you get a momentum going. So like I mentioned before, I have country directors who I never thought, who 2 years ago would have said, no, I don't want a shrink in my office, now are asking me to help them with recruitment. And so it's a long plan, but I think that's the outreach part of it. And it's really hard to do if you're sitting alone in headquarters and you've got a large field-based presence, or there's one of you. And so, and again, so that's part of it, I think, but also part of it is partnerships. I always tell our staff counselors when we hire them, you're a 1-part clinician and a 1-part diplomat. So you have to be able to work with all levels of the organization towards a reasonable, rational, but proactive and programmatic approach to well-being that involves everybody. And so, I think there's no shortcut for legwork, but it's difficult to do if you're one person sitting in HQ and you've got 100 offices in the field. But I think that's then when advocacy can come forward, and you see it. Once you get somebody on board and it's a good person, it starts to roll and it starts to people see the utility. But it's like I said, it's outreach and it's diplomacy. Thanks.
Thank you, Regan. I think it's a really important point around there is a lot of ongoing effort, and I know that even when we were looking at this around how do we get our messages out around World Mental Health Day, like looking at all of our channels, working out how do we get the message through, and we need to make sure that everybody's passing the message on to the next person. So we're really aware of all of the, so that we can make sure the message gets to everybody. So talking to our RCs, talking to the HR network, speaking through the counsellors network, all of those things play a role. And I know the other thing I'll just add in the Secretariat is that one of the things we're really looking at doing now is ensuring, given the Secretariat is such a big entity of its own right, we've pulled together a mental health leadership team with representatives across all of the different areas and looking at how can we make sure that every single office within the UN Secretariat is impacted on this, and also to make sure there's feedback mechanisms. I think that's what the other thing we've heard a bit, and from our speakers on Tuesday, is it's really important that everybody has a say in the work that we're doing. So we don't have all of the answers. Often it is people in that office that knows what needs to happen. So we need to make sure this is a two-way conversation all the way through. Now I'm seeing a question about, is the idea to make all major duty stations a UN city? I think it would be amazing, and I know in the work that I'm doing both in this area, but also we've been doing a lot of work around domestic abuse, and what we've seen is local approaches, everybody working together is really important. I don't know if anybody knows, I don't know if there is an answer to that, but I'm interested to hear from Natalia about what enabled Copenhagen to be known as the UN city, and how did you make sure you're all able to work together?
Thank you, Therese. This is a good question. I think we need to get the leadership on board from the very beginning, because if we don't have the support from them, then it will not always help. At the same time, I would say that we're lucky to be in Copenhagen, where people are used to express their opinions, are used to, come up with their ideas, and they do support the different initiatives themselves. So whenever we open the gym, so you could see suddenly there were so many people running around, and then you, who is not running, it's like, oh my God, I need to run, right? So you get inspired by the other people. And I also have a feeling, at least I can talk about UNFPA, a procurement service branch, we are vocal, we are coming up with the ideas, and we support each other, we inspire each other. And I think this helps, like the environment itself, leadership support helps, and also the communication. This is something where we are actually lacking right now. I can tell you very honestly and openly, this is something that we should be better to communicate it more regularly to staff. But whenever the ideas are coming, people are supporting them. So this is what I can help. I can share.
Therese, if I can add something. Thanks. One of the things.
Yes, can we throw to Anna? It'd be interesting to hear from you, Anna.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So one of the things we've done in the COVID response, both at the regional level and at the country level, is we've helped them set up wellbeing support networks so that they work out what they can do to help each other look after themselves and offer each other practical activities and things. And people have liked that. The purpose of those has changed as the COVID response has gone on. So firstly, it was around helping people have a sense of belonging, which they could no longer get because they weren't in the offices. And they were offering each other cooking classes and yoga classes and things. And now they're moving more into like support activities. So there is a paper on how to set up a wellbeing support network on our web pages that some people can use. And if you want to talk to any of my councillor colleagues who have been implementing these, then please get in touch. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Now, just one final question before I get the final advice from each of our presenters. So are there plans to use digital technology to further support staff, either the use of AI, chatbots and avatar therapy? And we did hear from AXA Asia the other day about how they're using AI as part of this. I don't know if any of our presenters have a response to that. I know that, there is certain thinking happening. I know Anna's developed a game that people are using. Certainly, I think there is room for us to pilot and trial different responses in this area, and I'd be really interested to look into that. I'm not aware of any specific things that are happening, but I think it's a good point for us to consider to ensure that we're looking at all different ways to be able to support stuff, and there's some fantastic evidence in that area. So I'm going to just quickly throw to each of our presenters to see two quick things. So you've got about 30 seconds. What's the final piece of advice you would give to people across the UN system if what is absolutely critical if we're wanting to implement mental health and wellbeing within our organisations? And secondly, what is one thing you've done to look after your own mental health and wellbeing over this period, particularly over the last 6 months? So I think I'll go in the same order as we did presenters. So throwing to you, Anna. You're on mute. Anna.
Sorry, I'm off mute. So I think the one piece of advice is to listen to people in the many different cultural settings about what they want for mental health and well-being and offer that, not what you think is needed, and build from that basis. And hit all levels, as many levels as possible in the organization, and sort of work and keep working. It's a continuous thing. My own well-being strategy, a very key one, is make sure I have enough chocolate and desserts around at any time. And my fridge is stocked. It's stocked every Friday. So thank you.
Excellent ideas, Anna. Okay, Regan.
I'll wait till my red light comes on. Okay. Look, I think there's no shortage of there's no shortcuts. I think you have to invest in services. And while I respect the fact, and we need to have external sources available, the evidence suggests that in the UN context, staff will respond to internal services and access internal services. So, and I've seen that twice in the last 10 years I've been doing this, where external bodies have been brought in and people just don't access it. So I think there's no shortcut. I wish there isn't, and nor should there be. So I think, again, you know, how you do that and the way you plan that and be strategic. You've got lots of great examples of strategies all around you. And no matter where you are in that process, there will always be more to do, but I think you can get momentum going. I've seen it in 2 agencies I've worked in, 3 agencies. So it can happen, but it has to be an investment, but it's a great return on investment. What I do for my mental health is I keep my boundaries fairly strong. So it's 4 o'clock here in Rome. 1 hour from now, I'm done. I'm shutting it down, finished. And I try and at least take 3 to 4 weeks off every summer and don't answer my email. Thank God I've got a great team around me who manage everything. And so, and I think, you know, we're our own worst enemies, I think, sometimes as staff members, when we think there's always more to do, and there always is more to do. But without those clear boundaries, you'll end up burn out. So I do that as much as I can. Thanks.
Excellent advice, Regan. Okay, Nancy.
There we go. I think I would say 2 things for organizations is, 1, use a holistic approach. First of all, there's no one size fits all, but also it's really, really encouraging for staff when they're able to see that the dots are being connected for them, when they're able to see that this work that's being done over here by medical services is connecting to the staff counselor, is connecting to this policy, is connecting to this managerial action, is connecting to our values, is connecting to our competency framework, and it is really, really impacting on what happens on our workplace floor and how effective we are. It's incredibly important so that this is not something that's seen to be dealt with by somebody else over there. The second one is be really, really creative. You know, again, it's not one size fits all in terms of what people or how people will interact with information, with communication, or with assistance. And this is why I love the toolkit approach. You talked about technology just now. Some people would prefer to listen to a podcast. Some people would never touch them. Some people are happy reading articles. Some people will never go and look at the intranet. So how are you going to reach them? So again, just be as creative as possible. What it's about is just reaching out to everybody and ensuring that everybody has access to the same information and the same resources as everybody else. What am I trying to do in the last couple of months? I'd like to talk about two things. One is I keep a gratitude journal, and it's been amazing to see how much more I attract things to be grateful for by that. And then the second one is just every day I try to do a random act of kindness so whether it's letting somebody else get in ahead of me, because right now we can only go into the lift 4 people at a time. So it can get a bit ferocious at the door if there are already 3 people out there and there are 2 people waiting. But there's always something that you can do to make somebody else's day a little bit better. And it's so lovely to see people look a bit shocked when they've had something delightful, along their path. So that's what I would say. Thank you. And it's amazing to be part of this for the UN. It's really, really amazing after years of working for the UN to see us talking about mental health and well-being in positive ways, and to say, sometimes it's okay not to be okay. And you know what? We're okay with that. And we're going to be together when that happens. So thank you.
That was beautiful, Nancy, and I love your idea of small acts of kindness. So Natalia.
Thank you very much, Therese. What I would like to say is, for the organization, I would encourage the organization to focus, or not to focus, but to invest on the prevention, because I think it's much easier to prevent the burnout, to prevent the stress, rather than to address the issue afterwards. So to use quite some resources on prevention. Also for the staff or whoever is listening to us, please don't wait. Go and seek help. I know in many countries, in many cultures, it can be taboo. Don't wait. Just go and do that here and now if you feel that you need some help. And what do I do now? Nancy has almost stolen my idea that I had in my head. But what I would like to say, that I have a mantra that I'm also sharing always with all the stuff that I'm surrounded by, that, you know what, life is short. We should appreciate each and every day, and we should appreciate what we have. And therefore, I'm very thankful to what I have, and I do practice the gratitude very often, and it helps me. Thank you very much. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you, Natalia, and thank you to all of our amazing presenters today. Such a wealth of information and experience and practical tips, and also thank you for all the work that you do to make a difference to UN personnel. Thank you to everybody who has come along today. We've got a lot more events and action happening over the next, over the rest of October. We've got our contact details coming up. So we've got the 4 weeks. Key pieces of information is there'll be updates on our website, and the link to this is in the bottom, and we'll add that to the Q&A section. If you've got any comments, please email us at mhs@un.org. And we also have newly minted social media platforms. So on Twitter and Instagram at UN for Mental Health. And they're new, so we're just building up our followings now, but a lot of amazing advice and tips that are coming up on there. So I encourage you to follow those. Thank you for your interest. I'm really positive to see how much work is already happening in UN organisations, and there is so much more obviously that we can do, but we're to see that shift happening and to see so much action happening, I feel really positive for the future of the UN. So thank you again, and I hope you can come to our future sessions as well. Thank you.